Well, with the Chancellor just sitting down after his comments to the CBI, let's get some reaction now from the government straight away, shall we? We can speak now to the Attorney General Suella Braverman, who's live in the Palace of Westminster. Thank you very much for being with us this evening. We just heard from the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak. He said, "We have a collective responsibility to help the most vulnerable. We stand ready to do more." What are you going to do?
Well, the government has already acted. Whilst we accept times are tough for many households around the country because of inflation, caused largely because of factors outside our control, I must add. You know, we're seeing similar trends in the US and the EU. It's right that the government should act. And that's why we've already announced a £22 billion package of support to help people, particularly those on the lowest incomes, with the cost of living. And much of that is phased out across the year. So whether it's raising the national living wage, whether it's helping families with their energy bills through the £150 council tax rebate that is set to increase later this year, or whether it's the biggest ever cut in fuel duty. And there are many other measures that we've already announced, which are already taking effect, which are designed specifically to help all of those people struggling right now with the cost of living.
You're talking there about what's already been announced, but Rishi Sunak was pretty clear there that he's signalling that more is to come. He said our response will evolve. We stand ready to do more. And I guess my question is, you know, lots of families are going to be really, really worried about how they're going to make ends meet. Well, we've seen these inflation figures, 9%, the biggest rise in 40 years. He was pretty clear to the businesses what's going to happen. He said, in the autumn budget, we will cut your taxes. Why can't you be clear to families and working people and people who are really struggling up and down the country? Why can't you be clear to ordinary people as well? What are you actually going to do?
Well, I think we have been very clear and we've actually taken action. In November, almost 2 million of the lowest income working households who receive universal credit will have been benefiting from a cash boost worth £1,000 on average. And that's thanks to our reduction to the universal credit taper rate and an increase to claimants' work allowances. We've been clear about the £150 council tax rebate to support people with their energy bills. We've been clear we're doubling the household support fund with an extra £500 million available to help directly those people most in need. So I think we've actually been quite clear. There is a lot of support there. And of course, the Chancellor is right. We're always going to be keeping a watching brief on the situation and we'll respond as things evolve.
Well, just to jump in, because you're saying the Chancellor wants to keep a watching eye on the situation, and that's really what I'm asking about. I understand the stuff that's been announced already, but I think what is clear is the Chancellor, and I think many of your own MPs are conceding that you are going to take further action. Our response will evolve. We stand ready to do more. And my question is, what is that more? What are you going to do?
Well, that is a decision for the Chancellor in terms of how he announces that. But I'm very pleased with what we've heard this evening, and I'm just hearing it secondhand on reports in the media that he wants to cut taxes. As Conservatives, we instinctively want to keep taxation low. We trust individuals and people to spend their money better than government, ultimately. That's the big difference between us and the Labour Party. And we want to ensure that taxation is low. And that's why from July of this year, we are increasing the national insurance thresholds to save a typical worker £330 a year, with 70% of employees to be better off as a result of those changes that we're making. So those are things those are tax cuts that are going to be coming into effect.
I understand, the Conservative principle that, a marginal pound is better spent by an individual than the state. I get that. But we are in extraordinary times here. Inflation is at 9%. There's a lot of people on benefits who are worried about keeping their children warm, about putting food on the table. So actually for them, perhaps that marginal pound spent by the state is the difference between keeping their families warm and not, or getting an extra loaf of bread at the weekend, right? Do the usual rules apply?
As I said at the outset, we're very much aware that many families will be struggling right now, and particularly for those people on benefits. There are a huge amount of resources available to them. For example, if you look at an average household and the outgoings, it's things like their bills, their utility bills. That's why I won't mention it a third time, but help on council tax. But for people on benefits, it goes even further. There's help to assist on water bills. There's help to assist on paying childcare. That's not just available for people on benefits. That's actually available to a very wide number of people. And actually, there's many people, thousands of households who are not actually claiming the 15 or 13
at the same time, though,
hours free childcare paid for by the government. There's help to help.
Universal credit is going up by 3.7%. Universal credit is going up by 3.7%. Inflation is going up today by 9%. I mean, I'm not a mathematician, but you know and I know that things are getting very, very hard for families. And actually just saying, actually, look, there's loads of help around there. People just need to look a bit harder to find it. Is that really sufficient?
Listen, as I say, we are very cognizant of the struggles that many families are facing. However, I just want to say it's not fair to say that the government has done nothing and that we're somehow not responding. We've announced a £22 billion package. That's significant. We've annount significant tax cuts.
We've not saying that you've done nothing, obviously, and you've set out the help that is available. When do you think more help, as Rishi Sunak signalled, when will that come? Will that come in July before the summer recess?
Listen, you're asking me something that really is going to be a decision for the Chancellor and the Prime Minister and the Cabinet. He's made an announcement today. That's going to be worked through and in terms of how that's announced. But I can't give you any timelines on announcements. But if the Chancellor says there will be tax cuts coming, I trust him, and I'm very glad to hear it.
OK. Now, you, of course, are the Attorney General. You're the legal advisor to the government. If the UK government unilaterally scraps or ignores parts of the Northern Ireland Protocol without the agreement of the EU, with, of course, whom you signed the Brexit deal with, would that be breaking the law?
I can't get into the details of legal advice, unfortunately. I know that might sound a bit odd, but there's a convention in government, which means that the law officers can't comment on the fact or the content of their legal advice. But we do know what the Foreign Secretary has said, and she has made very clear in her statement yesterday that the action proposed by the government has a lawful basis, and there will be a statement which will be issued by the government in due course, setting out a bit more detail behind that. So I'm not able to go into the details behind the legalities. What I am able to say is that the measures announced are important, vital, and have my support. It's really there are challenges and problems in Northern Ireland caused by the operation of the protocol in relation to and the effects of those problems are visible for everyone to see. We've seen the collapse of Stormont, so that people in Northern Ireland are not going to be getting the services that they deserve because of a paralysis in their government. We've seen more burdens and costs imposed on traders based in Northern Ireland because of excessive bureaucracy, affected by the EU's application of the rules in the protocol. So there are problems. We want to get Stormont back up and running. We want to ensure that Northern Ireland's place within the territory of the United Kingdom is secured and reassured. And that's why these proposals are very important.
I just want to ask a really sort of simple question. You're saying there that there's a convention not to publish the legal advice, but at the same time, we are in quite an extraordinary situation. The situation, of course, in Northern Ireland, extremely fragile. Lots of people are very, very concerned about what's happening there. Will you commit to publishing the legal advice on this?
The Foreign Secretary's made clear that we're going to be publishing a statement setting out the government's...
That's a bit different, though, isn't it? So can we just unpick that bit? Will you publish the legal advice that you gave to the government, or are we just going to rely on a statement? What will be in that statement? What's actually happening?
No, we're not going to publish the legal advice. It's incredibly rare for the government to publish its legal advice. I don't think it's actually ever really been done before. So there are, any lawyer will know legal advice is privileged and confidential. That means even more in the context of government. And, this is an important issue. And, the government has the right to keep its legal advice private and confidential. I hope you'd respect that, as anybody else has that right. But I think that what the government is doing, as I said, it will be setting out a bit more detail about the legal basis so that people have a bit more of an understanding about why we think the action taken is lawful.
I just trying to work out your red lines on what's happening at the minute with the protocol, because, talking to some people on the EU side, they say, look, we're willing to try and find a landing zone where there's fewer checks needed. Do you want to see the role of the European Court of Justice removed in ruling in disputes in Northern Ireland?
Yes. The European Court of Justice should not be the final arbiter of disputes between the UK and the EU. And the bill that we have committed to introducing will reflect that.
So there's no way then that you're going to get an agreement with the EU on this, is there, frankly, if that is a red line for you?
Well, I've been talking about issues relating to the European Union for too many years now to know that those in the media who predict the worst aren't often proven to be right, Sophie, with respect. So I wouldn't want to prejudge the outcome of what happens with this issue. I very much hope the EU will respond creatively, positively, constructively. The ideal outcome for all of us is that we get a renegotiated settlement that works for the United Kingdom, and in particular works for the communities in Northern Ireland, and upholds the primacy of the Good Friday Agreement, the foundation of peace, but also respects the boundaries of the European Union's single market, which the UK really does pay a lot of respect to.
OK, and very just quickly, because I do want to talk to you about one other topic as well. But, some people listening to you will find this, frankly, quite astonishing, that the UK is willing to unilaterally, effectively rip up major parts of an agreement that you signed, that people said would lead to checks along the Irish Sea, that Boris Johnson sold as a brilliant deal. And now you're just saying that, actually, no, we can just unilaterally rip the whole thing up and it's not such a great deal after all. What is going on?
I think what most people will find very astonishing, more worryingly actually, is how the situation in Northern Ireland has been detrimentally affected by the EU's application of the protocol. We entered
54 of the 90 members of the Northern Ireland Assembly are in favour of keeping the protocol as it is, rather than scrapping it.
Well, you'll know. Well, actually, the majority, all parties, actually agree that there are profound problems with the protocol. So that's actually not controversial. And the majority, the largest group on the executive, the unionists, all agree that the protocol must be changed fundamentally. So I don't think, I think the people in Northern Ireland...
54 of the 90 members of the Northern Ireland Assembly are from parties who are in favour of not doing what you want to do with the protocol, but in effectively maintaining it.
Well, what we know is that in Northern Ireland, because of the EU's application of the protocol, we are seeing onerous checks and costs being applied to traders. The chairman of Marks and Spencer's has come out and said that the way it's being implemented is bureaucratic. It's very difficult for it's making it almost impossible for business to be done, and that actually the disproportionate level of checks just isn't justifiable, and that's what we want to remedy. We want to find a compromise, and we want to definitely find an agreement that works, as I say, for Northern Ireland, for all communities, for both communities, and for the EU and for the UK.
Now, we have seen more allegations, some allegations about a Conservative MP arrested on suspicion of rape. Now, he hasn't been named. Now, previously, it was quite common for suspects to be named after an arrest. That seems to have changed more recently on privacy concerns, unless there's a strong public interest to name them. Do you think it's right that the MP should not be named at this point?
Well, first of all, I think it is obviously shocking and worrying that we've had this report. I have to say, I don't know that many details. I only know as much as I'm hearing on the media, and I don't know who it is, importantly. But what we do know is that someone has been arrested. And I think the reason this person has been asked to stay away from the parliamentary estate, I think that's an important step forward. However, I think that if the whip is removed at this stage, it then becomes obvious who this person is, and that will also potentially prejudice the anonymity of the victim, who may at this stage still want to remain anonymous. So I think that we're at a very delicate stage, and I think steps need to be taken very carefully. And of course, at the right time and in the right circumstances, a person may be named. But I think right now it's premature.
OK, now just to ask very briefly to end about the wider culture at Westminster. And to be clear, I'm talking in general, I'm not talking about the specific case. Is there a misogyny problem at Westminster? And if there is, what needs to change?
Honestly, and speaking based on my own experience, no. I have been in Parliament now as an MP for 7 years. I've been in politics for almost 20 years. It is male-dominated, that's true. But is there a culture of misogyny? No way. I see the vast majority of my male counterparts of all parties are courteous, respectful and supportive. And unfortunately, as we see in all workplaces, there is a very small minority for whom their behaviour falls short. But is there a culture? No.
OK. Thank you very much for being on the programme today. Suella Braverman there. Thank you very much.